we have this saying: "It's better to remain silent and be thought of a fool than to speak and remove all doubt."
Yeah.
Right, and that one has in the past been attributed to various people like Mark Twain or Abraham Lincoln, but it turns out I did a little research on it, and it's actually a guy named Maurice Switzer.
That was my third guess.
Yeah, he's almost as famous as those other two guys, but he actually had it in a book of his called Mrs. Goose, Her Book, which came out in 1906.
Which I'm sure you've all read.
It came out in 1906, so it probably wasn't a big influence on Twain or Lincoln.
Yeah.
Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today we are continuing our study on the 30 sayings of the wise from the book of Proverbs. And in this episode, we're going to cover saying 22, which is fools should remain silent. So let's go ahead and read that from Proverbs 24, verse 7.
Wisdom is too high for fools. In the assembly at the gate, they must not open their mouths.
So, what happens at the city gates in an ancient town, Caleb? Because it's a little bit different than what we do here. We don't even have city gates.
Yeah, we don't have any walls. Anyone can come in and conquer the city whenever they feel like it.
That's true.
At the city gates, that's going to be the traffic, where all the traffic passes through, right, for the day, in and out towards the fields or merchants coming in. So the elders of the city would sit at the gate and discuss important matters or possibly judge on disputes. So really, it's kind of like the local government, the city council, so to speak.
And so what would the problem be with having fools participate in that?
Hopefully none. It might be too late for most of our cities.
Yeah. All right. So we wouldn't want a fool to be the one mouthing all the opinions when we need a good decision made.
Yeah.
So in a recent episode, we talked about how wisdom speaks in Proverbs chapter 8. But in that one, we were focusing on how wisdom spoke at the beginning of time, or about the beginning of time, and how it participated in the formation of the world, and it was like a law of nature, and we talked about that. But there's an earlier section of Proverbs 8, right, that talks about a little bit more about this, about wisdom speaking at the gates. So let's go ahead and read the first few verses of Proverbs 8, verses 1 through 5. Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries out, "To you, O people, I call out. I raise my voice to all mankind. You who are simple, gain prudence. You who are foolish, set your hearts on it."
So, Solomon personifies wisdom here. So she herself is calling the simple and the foolish to the city gate. So it's not, you could read the verse from our saying today as saying that the foolish shouldn't even be there, right? But that's not actually, that doesn't seem to be what Solomon thinks, since he wrote both of these passages. He's actually calling them there to learn, right?
Yeah.
And if it's the elders of the town who sit at the city gates and debate or pass judgment, if you went and listened, you'd probably learn a lot.
Yeah, right. I think it's an endorsement of that system, right? I think wisdom is saying, I endorse the elders. They are smarter than everybody else, and you should listen to them in one sense, right? And in another sense, it's saying, and if you're simple, you should go there to ask them for their opinion about things.
Yeah.
So
it's, they are called there not to be the ones giving the judgment or giving the advice.
Yeah.
The ones that are receiving, that are learning from it. So if they go and listen to these older men, they will be on track to becoming wise themselves one day.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if you spent all your time at the city gates listening to their wisdom, you would pick it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So another way of saying this is that wisdom is calling the simple or the foolish to listen more than they talk, such as in these Proverbs. Proverbs 10, verse 8, the wise in heart accept commands, but a chattering fool comes to ruin. And Proverbs 17:28, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. We have a lot of modern sayings that
Yeah.
sound a lot like these.
Yeah, especially that last one there. We have this saying: "It's better to remain silent and be thought of a fool than to speak and remove all doubt."
Yeah.
Right, and that one has in the past been attributed to various people like Mark Twain or Abraham Lincoln, but it turns out I did a little research on it, and it's actually a guy named Maurice Switzer.
That was my third guess.
Yeah, he's almost as famous as those other two guys, but he actually had it in a book of his called Mrs. Goose, Her Book, which came out in 1906.
Which I'm sure you've all read.
It came out in 1906, so it probably wasn't a big influence on Twain or Lincoln.
Yeah. And then you have other sayings, right? Like, we have 2 ears but one mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak, right?
Mhm.
That's what wisdom is calling us to do here. Or we have the saying that a wise man speaks because he has something to say, and a fool speaks because he just has to say something. And that's kind of the warning here. That's when Solomon says wisdom is too high for a fool. Not that you'll never get there, you'll never understand that. Maybe you could if you shut up and listen, right? But if the fool goes to the city gate and starts running his mouth, telling everybody what to do, that's not going to be helpful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, but all of these things that Solomon said, we have these modern sayings, but Solomon
Right.
said them like thousands.
They
of
weren't
years
good
ago.
enough for us, so we had to restructure them in books about geese.
Yeah, I think actually there was another famous book out at the time, I think called Father Goose, His Story or something like that. And so this guy ripped off
Like
the
a
title.
parody of it.
Yeah, did a
Oh.
parody of it or something. So even if we do decide to be silent and listen, right, and be in a learning mode instead of running our mouths, right, we still need to be careful of who we listen to, right?
Yeah. So my favorite chapter in Proverbs is chapter 26. So I want to include the first verse of that, which says, like snow in summer or rain in harvest, honor is not fitting for a fool. So if you choose to listen to somebody, to take their advice, to follow them, use them as a mentor, that's giving them a lot of honor, right? And you're following at least half of wisdom's advice, which is to listen, but you haven't listened to wisdom. So, and I mean, what kind of people do you elevate in your life? How often do we honor people for all the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
Uh, just because a guy throws the most touchdowns, or he's the strongest, something like that. The strongest
That was
man isn't
our recent episode that we had about
about
the strong man. Yeah.
doesn't make him wise. Not that anyone who's a great athlete couldn't also be wise, but if that's all you cared about, you certainly wouldn't be. Whether you're the athlete or the person looking up to the athlete,
Yeah.
that's going to be devoid of wisdom there. Or a lot of people put their trust in physical appearance, whether that's men or women, makeup or muscles, whatever. Again, not that you couldn't be attractive and wise, but again, that's where you put all your eggs in that basket. There's not going to be any eggs in the wisdom basket. So, and that's probably why there are kind of tropes sometimes that go along with like the dumb jock or the dumb blonde or something, because there are a lot of people who care so much about those things that they've neglected other aspects of their life.
Yeah, and that was that. I guess it was 4 episodes ago when we had the one about don't envy the wicked,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like elevating this last category that we had in our notes here of the man who sacrifices all of his time to work and at the expense of his family,
Mhm.
and he doesn't practice the Shema, right? So he's out trying to earn a buck, but he's not. He's trying to do something good, which is to raise money, for his family, but he's not investing in his kids in their moral.
If
in their
he takes
moral
all his
upbringing.
time away from them, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is he neglecting there? What command is he disobeying? The Shema.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's that's what I was saying. Yeah.
Like what good is it? What does Jesus say? Man does not live by bread alone,
Mhm.
right? So you give your kids bread on the table, and then no time, no teaching, no wisdom, and no good fatherly role model to look up to.
Yeah.
And you might as well not have given them the bread. So
It's true.
Um, I think I can give a specific example. I won't use his name partially because I don't remember it, but I know he's been one of the judges on the Shark Tank show, so you might be able to find it from that. But I saw a clip that just popped up randomly on YouTube one time. I don't know why it was recommended to me or why I watched it, but somebody was calling. I guess he does a podcast or a radio show or something. Somebody called his show for asking for advice, and the caller was like a college kid who was running some kind of business, online business from his dorm room, um, just in his spare time, and making already worth $1 million. And the advice he wanted, he called in to ask. He had a girlfriend who constantly wanted him to go and spend time with her and with her family. Like the specific example was that she wanted him to come to her little brother's like baseball game or something. And he's like, I don't have time for this. I'm running my business and yada yada yada. But I do like her a lot. What's your advice? And the guy's advice, which this is why I don't want to name him, his advice was, which is going to be harder to replace, the $1 million business or the girlfriend? And I was like, you'll never be able to replace the girlfriend who met you before you were a millionaire. So anyone you meet now might just like you for the money.
Yeah.
Especially if this is the kind of personality you're going to develop. They probably only could like you for the money. And I just remember listening to that thinking, what, it probably just ruined this guy's life and the life of any family he does build. It's just such
Or the
horrible
people listening.
horrible advice. Yeah, and hundreds of people probably tuning in to that all look up to this guy as a good role model. So that's a very real world example of looking up to this. Or just the other day, we mentioned who throws the most touchdowns. You were talking about an interview. This was not on the show on the podcast, but we were talking about this personally. An interview with Tom Brady, right? Was that you?
Oh yeah.
After like his third Super Bowl, and somebody was interviewing him, and he was basically like, that's it. Like I should be happy. Like with 3 Super Bowls. Like it doesn't get better than that.
But he's like, there has to be more than this.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, the guy asks him like, well, what's the answer? And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah. It's so sad to watch,
Yeah.
and it's like, I feel a little bad. We did name drop him there, but you probably have heard of him anyway.
He's happier now. He's won a few more Super Bowls.
Yeah. Well, let's hope he figured some other things out too from that day. It was like 20 years ago.
But now this other guy that you mentioned that gave the bad advice to the guy who was dating a girl. So who we get our wisdom from, as we've been saying, is a big deal. You don't want to listen to a fool, right? Mm-hmm. And like the proverb that we read in Proverbs 26 there said that it's like snow in the summer, right?
Yeah, which is not good, by the way. I mean, we hear that and we think, well, yeah, because I learned in kindergarten that snow goes in the winter. It's like, well, Solomon's writing that in an agrarian culture. And if it snows in the summer, half of them are going to die of starvation that year. Yeah. So this is really, really not good.
Yeah, it's not fitting, right, to honor a fool, to listen to him, to give him audience and all these things. So as the official Biblocus historian, I was wondering if you knew of any examples from human history or from history from a galaxy far, far away and a time long ago.
Yeah, I wanted to quote good old Ben Kenobi here because it really reminded me of this when in the original Star Wars movie where he says, "Who's the more foolish, the fool or the one who follows him?"
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, it's the blind leading the blind, and at least the fool that's leading has gotten that far. He's leading somebody, The other fools are just following in his footsteps.
What was he trying to say about Chewbacca anyway? I don't know.
So it was Han Solo.
Yeah, but Chewbacca follows Han Solo, so
yeah, it
gets even further down the fool chain instead of the food chain there.
Yeah. Well, you just let the Wookiee win, okay?
Let the Wookiee win. That's good advice. Yeah, that was from the fool.
All right, we should probably get back to the Bible. So, all right, if we shouldn't follow fools, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully the Bible can give us some advice on how to find a good leader or good mentor.
Yeah. What traits should we look for? So Jethro, for instance, he gave good advice to Moses when Moses was struggling to provide leadership to entire mass of people out in the wilderness, right? So
yeah, we're not going to read the whole story. I think I believe we've read it on here before, haven't we? But just the context there is Moses has led the people out of Egypt. They're out in the wilderness, and he's basically the leader, like the only leader. So any tiny dispute, she stole my earring. He has to now sort out every dispute
Yeah.
between the people over anything, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing.
That's
And
the problem when you don't have a city gate and you're just
yeah,
wandering around. You don't have a
yeah.
bunch of elders.
He
sitting
didn't
at
know
the
where
gate.
to sit. So that's why they walked for so long.
Yeah. So
Then they found some cities and they're like, let's take these. So Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, tells him, you're wearing yourself out. You need to appoint leaders. And here's how he advises him to choose the leaders. Exodus 18:21. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So to highlight those traits there, right? The first one, men who fear God. We didn't read this verse again because it would have been the 20th time, or how many 22 sayings? It would have been the 22nd time we could have brought it up. But the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? So that's a great place for him to start looking for wise judges.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he says trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, but I think also men who trust God.
Yes.
That was something that we saw in our "Don't Envy the Wicked."
Right.
The Psalm 37 when we were studying that, and its parallels to Psalm 24 or Proverbs 24 1 and 2. We noticed in Psalm 37 it said, "Trust God and do good."
Mm-hmm.
And so, like that, you're looking for men who trust God and do the right thing.
Yeah, and it's also reminded me of the principle that Jesus teaches, right? Who he was faithful with little will be given much.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically find the men who have been faithful in the small things, and they're probably also going to be faithful in the big things.
Yeah. So appoint them over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and
Yeah.
tens.
And I like hatred of dishonest gain, or some translations will say bribes. Imagine, a judge going to bribe the judge, and not only does he not accept it, he puts you in jail for it. Like that kind of guy would be a reliable judge.
Yeah. Well, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not just the Old Testament, though, right? So Paul had some things to say about it, and so his expectations for leadership in the church that he gives in a couple of places, and one of those is Titus 1:6-9, which says, "An elder must be blameless, faithful to his wife, a man whose children believe and are not open to the charge of being wild and disobedient. Since an overseer manages God's household, he must be blameless, not overbearing, not quick-tempered, not given to drunkenness, not violent, not pursuing dishonest gain. Rather, he must be hospitable, one who loves what is good, who is self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. He must hold firmly to the trustworthy message as it has been taught, so that he can encourage others by sound doctrine and refute those who oppose it."
Yeah, so I mean, we see some of the same principles there, right? If he's going to be, as it says in verse 7, the manager of God's household, well, let's look at his household. Is he faithful to his wife? Are his kids obedient? Is he leading them to God? Because if he's not, why would you want him supposedly leading you and your whole church family to God?
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting, though, over the years of my life, I've heard people talk about these things as though they're disqualifications for a man to be an elder. Like they'll say, he can't be an elder because his kid's a drunk or something like that, And it's like, no, that's not what it's not trying to protect the church from a guy who's not a good dad, right? It's trying to protect the kid from a church that wants to take his dad away from him and give him responsibilities that he doesn't need to be taking on because he needs to be practicing the Shema and spending more time with his kid.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think
because I think the temptation for us is like, oh, do I want to be an elder? Oh yeah, that's what a great honor. I want to be an elder. But like the passage we read about, don't give honor to fools. Well, I mean, don't puff somebody up and offer them this position as an elder and entice them and lure them away from the responsibilities that they need to be addressing, like that they have a kid who's in trouble.
Yeah.
Because you're stealing the dad from the kid.
That's one way of reading it. Like I know you always, because you're an elder now, and you would never accept it while you still had any kids at home.
That's right.
You thought that was pulling you away from your primary responsibility, which is probably right. I think also just simply children is the word there, right? I mean, what are you supposed to do when your kid's? He's not a kid. He's like 30 years old. He can make his own decisions at that point. So that again, if some people like their child grows up and leaves the church, and then they might treat that as disqualification. Well, he's not a child,
Yeah.
like you were saying, he's drunk. If he's 8 years old and he's a drunk, then yeah, that dad should. I don't even want him in the building.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 30 years old or not, I mean, uh, I think our tendency is to look at these as, oh, I don't want that to stop me from being an elder. It's like, no, you don't want the responsibility of being an elder to stop you from being a dad.
Yeah,
And even if your kid's 30, maybe you do need to clear the calendar and make sure there's time.
yeah, maybe.
So,
So,
I mean, a 30-year-old kid can be really difficult.
I'll tell you in a year. I'm 29. So the other thing that I really picked up on here, like there's a lot of things listed there, right? Not overbearing, not quick tempered, right? But and it mentions the dishonest gain again. But there's really a balance, I think, that's being struck here, because he says he shouldn't be quick tempered. Also, though, he should hold firmly to the trustworthy message as it has been taught, so that he can encourage others by sound doctrine and refute those who oppose it. And there's a balance there. You want your leader to be strong to oppose, in our case, specifically in the church, bad teaching, and in general, just bad ideas for any leadership position. You also want him to be kind, though. You don't want him to be a tyrant. And I like, how many of us tend to fail in one direction or the other, or pastors? I feel like nowadays, like it kind of oscillates. I think maybe throughout Christian history. Think about like Jonathan Edwards preaching sinners in the hands of an angry God. Like he was so kind, and loving. It's like, I don't know. He might have, struggled with that side of it. And I feel like a lot of pastors nowadays, if you just imagine the average pastor of an American church, he's probably like, just a nice dude sipping on his, pumpkin spice latte, smiling at everybody Sunday morning as I come in the door.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a generalization, but it feels like maybe right now the cultural impetus is in the other way, where they're not as strong or as ready to oppose something that's wrong, because they feel like they should be so nice. And
Well,
that's the discipline there. That's the balance that has to be struck.
yeah, it's interesting. This is what is it that they're opposing?
The
sound doctrine.
unsound doctrine.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but I
Yeah.
mean, but the people are opposing the sound doctrine.
Yeah.
They're saying, no, what you're saying is wrong. I mean, that's kind of the situation we're in, right? Like creationism. Wrong, you're wrong. That's not right. It's evolution, or it's, something else. The Big Bang, whatever. Your whole creation story is wrong. And so maybe we have been, too weak backboned when people oppose us and say, well, actually, the burden of proof's in your court. You're trying to prove a scientific theory. We're presenting, tried and true doctrine that has established entire civilizations.
Yeah.
And you're presenting the new material that no one's ever tried before,
Yeah.
or pretended.
That's the G.K.
to
Chesterton
understand.
quote. I know I've quoted this Chesterton quote before, where he says that we ought to start by teaching children the oldest things first,
Mhm.
but now we're teaching them the newest things first. Whatever theory was dreamt up last week,
Yeah.
now these are my words, whatever theory was
Mhm.
dreamt up last week, they're like, we got to get those into the preschools ASAP.
Well, I mean, imagine if a society came up with medical treatments for children that tried to change their characteristics and traits, and like experimented with them in real time, and then found out that they were deleterious to the whole society. Oh, well.
And I don't have to imagine that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But yeah, these things are not things to be tried lightly. And so when we have sound doctrine, right, we need to stand behind it,
Mhm.
And not let people refute it. If people refute it, we need to stand up and say, that's dangerous.
Yeah. I heard a pastor talk about this kind of striking that balance as a pastor, where you will, be firm about doctrine and stuff.
Mhm.
And he said, imagine if you get pulled over speeding or running a stop sign or whatever, and the cop just lets you off. You know what? It's fine. I'll just let you off with a warning. Obviously you're kind of happy about it in the moment, but you don't respect him for that.
Mhm.
And you're less likely to follow the law the next time. Or you're more likely to expect that you should be let off the hook for no reason the next time. It doesn't actually help anyone for him to do that. He should hold you to account. It's like, I forget which president it was. This was like early to mid 20th century. Was pulled over speeding, and the cop was like, "Oh, no, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to, to hold you up." He's like, "What are you talking about? Do your duty. Like, I'm your boss, and you're trying to not do your job right now." So you wouldn't for the same reason you shouldn't you should lose respect for a pastor if he, if somebody does something that's clearly out of line, or teaches something that's clearly opposed to scripture, and he just kind of lets it slide to be nice because, I wouldn't want to stir the pot. you know
Mm-hmm.
it's the same kind of job. You're managing the household. You're the guard. How about what's that? Which prophet was it that kept on having? God kept telling him, if the watchman blows the horn, and nobody,
Ezekiel, right?
Ezekiel, yeah.
Yeah.
If the watchman blows the horn and nobody answers, that's their fault. If he doesn't blow the horn, it's his fault.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very least, you got to say or do something.
Yeah. When you were talking about the officer writing the ticket to the president, it made me think of that joke that Ronald Reagan used to tell.
That narrows it down.
He had he had but jokes that the Russian people actually told that he collected,
Yeah.
and one of them was
Still doesn't narrow it
that
down.
they had they were having too many people speeding in their cars, and so they said, no exceptions, everybody gets a ticket, we gotta slow these cars down. And so Gorbachev, that was president at the time there, and he was out at a country home, and he had to get into the Kremlin for a meeting, and he told his driver, he goes, "Come on, we gotta go. I'm running late. We gotta go fast, And so the guy said, "Well, you know the rules, and no speeding, And he's like, "All right, I'll drive." And so Gorbachev gets in there, and he's driving, and they fly by these officers, and they go, "Well, hey, there's somebody speeding. No exceptions. Let's go." So the one guy goes, "I got this one," So he's like motorcycle cops or whatever. So he goes up and he pulls him over, and he turns around and he comes back to the other guy and he goes, "Give him a ticket?" And he was like, No, let him go. I let him go. And he goes, "What? No exceptions. No exceptions. Why? Who was it? Why would you not give him a ticket?" And he goes, "I don't know who the guy was, but his driver was Gorbachev."
Yeah, that's pretty funny. So anyway, to try and get us back on course here, these are the kind of traits that that mark wisdom, according to Paul, according to Moses, and Ben Kenobi. Right? Fear of the Lord, trustworthiness in small things, right? Having a backbone, right? Being willing to stand up for what's right, but also not being overbearing or quick tempered at the same time, right? You find somebody like that, that's a good person to listen to, right? I would add, I think, humility is a big one. One thing, especially now, like on the internet, you can find really good pastors teaching online. You can also find really bad pastors teaching online. To me, one of the best marks is if a pastor can just say, "I don't know." if let's say he's answering like live questions from the chat in YouTube or something, and if he can just say, "I don't know, I have to do more study on that," or if it's like more of a personal question, you should ask your pastor, your local pastor about that.
Mm-hmm.
The humility to not think, "I'm going to save everybody's day with every single question because I'm awesome." Like having the humility to know your role and know who you're called primarily to serve, and that you shouldn't even, as a pastor, shouldn't be stepping into another pastor's, flock, so to speak.
Yeah, that's true too. Other thoughts that you have?
Oh yeah, I also wanted to point out as well, even if somebody or you yourself lack some or all of these traits, right? Like we saw earlier, doesn't mean you're stuck an eternal fool, right? Back to that Proverbs, was it 10 verse 8, I think, that said, "The wise in heart accept commands," meaning you can learn. You can always learn as long as you like Socrates. You just realize that you aren't wise. You don't know everything. Yeah. You don't have all the answers.
If you were stuck being foolish, then there'd be no reason to go to the gates to try to learn.
Right.
Wisdom's calling you there for a reason, right?
So all are welcome at the city gate, right?
Yeah.
Or in kind of any discourse that you're in, but we should defer to those who are older and wiser than us.
Yeah.
Follow that old 2 ears and 1 mouth rule and try to listen more than you talk. And the more you do listen, the sooner you can join the ranks of the wise.
Yeah, that makes sense. So our wise words takeaway for this week. is the mark of wisdom is listening and learning. The mark of foolishness is assuming you know better already.
So what's another place besides the city gates? Because like we said, we don't have any. What's another place that all people would be welcome?
At a church.
Yep. So you can find a community of people who hopefully are listening and learning, or a couple of them should be teaching, probably.
Well,
and-
are you going there to listen, or are you going there to speak?
Yeah, this was interesting. It's kind of like the opposite of that JFK quote, right? Like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It's like, obviously, what he meant by that was right. It can also apply to church. Like, you should be willing to give a lot, but of your time or your money, your volunteering, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a way in which you should realize, all right, I'm not the complete package, so I don't need to just waltz in there and be the arbiter of everything that's right. I need to go in and listen and learn.
Yeah, and then as you listen, you might, whatever church you visit, or if you know a friend who's a Christian that you respect, you might ask him if you can attend church with them, and you can listen and make sure that church is speaking truth.
Mm-hmm.
You can visit several different churches until you find one that speaks sound doctrine. But the only way you're going to know that their doctrine is sound or not is if you are reading your Bible.
Yeah. Oh man, that's true. Yeah, because God's word is already established. Like if somebody tries to tell you, like, "Well, I got a word from the Spirit," and you're like, "Okay, which verse is it?" It's like usually, well, no, it's just that you should give money to my ministry. It's like, or something that happens to also benefit them right now. That was a kind of generous one.
Yeah, there is sort of a tendency of people who want to be like spiritual, who say, well, I know it's got to be the Spirit because it doesn't make any sense to me. Like that's the less sense it makes.
That's right,
the
because
more
God isn't logical or anything.
Yeah, right.
He didn't found the foundations of the earth with wisdom, like it said in Proverbs 8.
Yeah. He says he's the God of order, not disorder, right?
Yeah.
So his Spirit would be as well.
We had Pastor Brian Wolfmueller, who we interviewed on Biblocus. I remember him telling a story about a church that he was at one time as a younger man, where a couple came running into the Bible study who like barely knew each other, and they're like, "Great news, everybody! We're getting married. The Spirit told us to." And Pastor Wolfmueller's always like, "What's that last fruit of the Spirit again? Self-control." like the Spirit told you not to have self-control. It seems unlikely.
So find wise people, right, who embody the traits of Moses and Paul, like the things that we talked about, the things that Jethro mentioned to Moses, the things that Paul
mentioned to Titus there.
Yeah.
And in like every other letter he wrote to. Yeah, especially now, like I kind of mentioned this before with the internet, it's so easy to find just tons of people who have a podcast or a YouTube channel or radio show they want you to listen to. Subscribe to Biblocus, by the way. And you really want to have discernment, because like I doubt that the YouTube algorithm wants to recommend the wisest person to you, just the person who's going to get them the most clicks and the most ad revenue. So you really want to look for those kind of qualities in who you're going to listen to, whether it's a pastor or like a news agency or commentator or something like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, he's Caleb and I'm Timothy, and thank you for listening to Bible discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica, Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.